Hello, welcome to Viewpoints. I'm Ken Rubin, and with us today is Dave Brown. Dave is the Assistant Supervisory Federal Air Marshal in charge of the FAM's Boston Field Office. And today we're going to be talking about his thesis entitled, A Unifying Strategy for the Deployment of Preventative Radiological Nuclear Detection Capabilities. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Ken.
Got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
That's a really complicated issue, Dave. Why did you choose that topic?
That's a good question, Ken. Early in my career with the TSA, I had an opportunity to work on an initiative to deploy a preventative radiological nuclear detection capability with TSA's visible intermodal prevention and response teams, the Viper teams. And it was a hugely rewarding experience. It allowed me to work with multiple levels of government, federal, state, and local. And we basically took a new capability, PRND, and rolled it out with TSA's Viper teams. Because the capability is so new with the law enforcement teams across the country, there were a lot of opportunities there, and it really requires a lot of coordination between the different agencies that have the PRND capability. As I rolled it out with the teams, the TSA teams across the country, there were some opportunities there for greater coordination to make it a more effective enterprise. And so when I got into the program here, that was one of the issues that I brought with me that I wanted to take a look at in doing some further research.
Okay, regarding your research, what methodology did you use?
Well, I started out wanting to look at how can we make this a more cohesive program. And it's difficult because there's actually not an authority at the Homeland Security level that operationally coordinates all of these programs across the country. So the methodology that I wanted to use was how can we unite those? And in doing some initial research, it looked like establishing a national PRND concept of operations would be a first step in that process. And my thesis looked at, well, what should go into that CONOPS? And is the CONOPS indeed the right way to unite all these disparate efforts across the U.S.? So as for my methodology, I wanted to do, of course, you want your methodology to be qualitative, but it was difficult to do that because there wasn't a clearly defined definition of what a CONOPS is. I knew what I wanted, but it was difficult to find something that prescribed what it should be. So I reviewed the programs that some law enforcement organizations are deploying across the country and looked at their CONOPS. So I did a policy analysis on existing policies out there. And from that, I extracted what it looked like the most common elements that were included in their CONOPS. And the range was huge. They were everything from one-page SOP to a very, very complex multi-chapter document that united several agencies within a certain region. So I took that and I got a list of what were the most common or prevalent elements within a PRND CONOPS. And I didn't discount the things that weren't common, I just included those as innovative items as well. That gave me a quantitative element. I still needed the qualitative element. So what I did with that is I established a list of subject matter experts across the country from mostly law enforcement, but from the Homeland Security spectrum. And these were individuals who had run programs in weapons of mass destruction, CBRNE, and I put it to them and did interviews with each one of these subject matter experts to ask if they were establishing a PRND program today, what would they include in a concept of operations that could help engineer a cohesive program across the country.
Okay, so you had two levels there. So what were your key findings?
Well, once I established the list of what was most prevalent within the existing agency's PRND CONOPS, I used that and the answers from the subject matter experts to come up with what should go essentially into a template for the nation for PRND programs. I bounced that off of the subject matter experts just to make sure that I was going down the right path and to kind of get their certification on this. In the end, we found that some things were very important. We found that it's much more critical for a concept of operations to be multi-jurisdictional because of the nature of a PRND program. You know, if there's a Confederate out there with a device or with illicit nuclear material, they're not just going to stay within a single police officer's jurisdiction. It crosses jurisdictions. It's a national problem. So that was one of the key findings. Also, establishing good governance within a program was essential so that you could have a continuity within it, and you could maintain the continuity from one jurisdiction to the next, and have a way to make decisions so that when one organization was affected, those decisions could be made so that they could benefit all of the organizations that could subscribe to the same concept of operations.
Okay, based on those findings, were there any unexpected surprises in your findings?
Yeah, I think one of the unexpected findings was the most critical outcome of the thesis, and that was that you could have the concept of operations, but it's just a piece of paper. You really need to look at how to implement that. So one thing that kept coming up in the SME interviews was strategy. And I didn't start out looking at strategy at all, but it was so prevalent in the answers I received from the SMEs that I couldn't ignore it. So the biggest surprise that came out of this was that there needs to be a set way to deploy these programs. And it was especially critical because they are, as I said earlier, we did find that in order for them to be effective, they need to be multi-jurisdictional. So where do you put that multi-jurisdictional concept of operations? And one suggestion that came out of the thesis from the SME interviews is it needs to be at the state level and have cascading plans from there that implement each individual agency's PRND deployment. And that allows cohesiveness, but it also allows each individual agency to maintain their autonomy, if you will. So that was a huge, unexpected discovery.
Well, thanks, Dave. That's a complex issue, and we appreciate you sharing that with Viewpoints today. Thanks.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, Ken.